afternoon. My name is Sharnetta Clark-Gordon. Can you tell us your name, please?
Donald Ray Duff.
And
Pleasure to meet you.
nice to meet you. What year were you born?
1956. Seems like a very long time ago.
And where about?
Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Goldsboro, okay.
I was born there, and then shortly after that, we moved to Mooresville
What year did you graduate high school here in Mooresville?
in 1974.
And what school was that?
Mooresville Senior High School.
Mooresville Senior High, okay. Is there any memories of Mooresville Senior High you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, several. I mean, I was quite active. I played all sports. I ran track, played basketball, played football. I was active on campus. I was in the student council, actually, the president of the student council. The historical fact is I was the first black president of the student council in Mooresville Senior High. And I was in chorus, because I was, like music. So, pretty active.
Pretty active. All right. So in your time at the high school, were there other influential teachers that influenced your upbringing?
I'm not really sure if there were teachers, probably more so coaches. Some of the coaches like Gary Character and Coach Pearson, Perry Pearson. As far as influence, I think that was a different time. We were starting to transition from kind of the 60s kind of mentality, and I think because a lot of it, quite frankly, a lot of the white students encouraged me. Matter of fact, one of the students encouraged me to run, and for student council, and we were starting to say, I'm black and I'm proud, which is, kind of up for discussion later on where we are right now, as far as that goes, with the afros and all that. So we're post-civil rights movement, we were starting to kind of coexist a little bit better as a race of people, as far as the racism thing that was going on. I mean, North Carolina probably had, one of the widest Klan things going on during that period of time, primarily in the eastern part of North Carolina. I didn't experience it much. I remember the guy down that used to run city news, very friendly, but he always would flash his Klan card. and so, not to get off track of what you were talking, towards school that all went pretty rapidly, we all got along pretty good. I don't remember having a whole lot of issues, especially the football team. There was camaraderie there where we would all get together and do things, go to the lake, hang out, do things that high school kids do, the typical things. And Mooresville, when I started to travel and meet other people, coming out of Mississippi, Georgia, and stuff like that, I wasn't aware of the kind of the extreme racism because my opinion, we knew it was there, but it was never, because we all came together, and that's kind of how I got started on that book you were asking me about. We all would meet up on Main Street, the white people off of the Millview, and we would all just run them down the streets, through the creeks, over, around, and then the park over there where they had the airplane, and I think they had a baseball field over there. We would just hang out there. Occasionally somebody might maybe call you, but it'll always be that one remote little guy. But one of the experiences that I like to tell is Mama worked as a domestic over on Mill Hill, and we went over there one day, and I guess the first time it really hit me. And Daddy drove us over there to pick Mama up. And so when she came out, as we were driving off, the kids were saying, "Bye, niggers. Bye, niggers." I mean, it's sort of kind of funny in a way, but that was one of the things. So, and then working in the mill, of course, we used to have a thing in some of the mills where you were in high school that earn extra money. Charles Turner was one of the ones I'd split the shift with. They worked part of the time. He'd work part of the time, and I worked part of the time. And the other thing that I see, I'm glad it's still going on, because I was able to buy some of my own school clothes and kind of take that burden off my parents, was the, you might have to help me out. It was like a youth program, and it's still viable in Iredell County now. They would get you jobs at various places, like for the town. You might work for the town.
I care.
I care. And those types of things. And it was a value system of work, you know. Comparing it to now, everybody encouraged you to work hard and that you could be successful and you could overcome everything in life, despite, you know. So instead of things being kind of handed down to you. So those are the kind of building blocks for me. Everybody focused on, oh, you know, one of the things we used to do when we were 10, 11 years old, instead of waiting for somebody to give you some money and put something on your card, we'd take a rake, borrow a rake, and walk over. I lived on Eastern Heights at the time, and we'd walk over, which was kind of, it was just middle-class white people, but, you know, all white people seemed rich at that time to us. And, you know, they would rake yards, and they would pay us a couple of dollars. You know, there was money in our pocket, but it taught us a very valuable lesson in life, that you work and earn, you know, and it's respectful to do that instead of waiting for somebody else to kind of give you a handout. So that kind of developed me. But all my grandparents and dad and all those people and the people in the community kind of gave me that encouragement. You know, you got to do something better. You know, there's nothing here for you. So those types of things are, other than a little slight, oh, okay, oh, we blind, you know, we kind of like poor and stuff like that. But nobody's really burning across in your yard, or, you know, and I know there were some probably murders or things, abuse, maybe in the jail, you know. Unfortunately, I had a little experience with that. A little bit of experience with it, you know, how we do. And you could tell. But it just wasn't overwhelming. And because when I went to our 40th reunion, those were the kind of things we talked about. And then some of the white people too, because Mooresville, really, the biggest employer probably was the mill, right? And so some of the white people were kind of suffering just like us. Oh, you took a bath in a tub? Well, you know, that was a lot of water. So you would boil the water on top of a wood coal stove, and everybody used that water. You know, if you had 4 kids, the girls would get in there first and, you know, take their little baths, and, you know, and then you would get in there and use the same water and then throw the water out. My grandmother, they said she was blind, but she had a lot of sight. We used to live with her initially, and she'd babysit for her. She'd be in there blind, cooking us food and stuff like that. And I have fond memories of her because she was a praying woman. You know, she was, I guess at the time, I thought it was ancient. She was probably about 80 when she died. She would pray. And for a very long time, one of the things I would say, hell, this must be working for me, because, you know, how far I've gone. You know, every night she'd get on her knees. I mean, there's only 2-bedroom old meal home over there on Sharp Street. Didn't have any paint on it, you know, and had the little flat wood siding, and birds would climb up in there. You go to the bathroom, you know, you'd see underneath the ground, you know, you'd have to step over the hole to use the bathroom. These are all valuable experiences. And she would come in there. I was the only boy, so she would come in there and say, pray. She'd be on her knees and she'd say, Lord, you have all the power in your hand. I think she would pray for 45 minutes. Saying, bless everybody, bless the Lord, you know, bless all the kids, you know, Uncle Edward, you know, needs to stop drinking. I mean, she was just 45 minutes. Oh, Grandma, please get in bed. I'm trying to go to sleep. And then after she died, I had to sleep back there by myself. That was crazy. Kurt's laughing, but I mean, you know, sometimes in life when things get a little bit rough, and I always like repeat that to myself, you know, you get all the power in your hands.
What was her name?
Ophelia Duff.
All right, let me stop you for a second.
Okay.
Just take a little break.
Now, I don't know when Sean had to go get the military part.
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about your grandmother and being a praying woman and how you know that those prayers have gotten you through in your life. Are there any military experience or college experience that you'd like to share with us?
I enlisted in the Army in 1976. But prior to that, I went to, right out of high school, I went to Livingstone College for a year. And, you know, one of the things, you know, paying for the education, which is a lot cheaper back then. And Mama worked at the mill, and she got me like $1,000 loan, and everything else I was able to get through probably a Pell Grant. But, you know, that was kind of a change for me, because I really didn't want her, you know, I felt like that was a lot of money. It was back then. $1,000 was quite a bit of money. But I, you know, eventually paid her back. So I enlisted in the Army. And I never wanted to go to the Army because, you know, it was kind of like straddling the Vietnam era. And over here at that cemetery, you know, we lived on Eastern Heights, right across the opposite end of the little gully there. Is that Willow Valley?
Yeah.
Every day during Vietnam, you'd hear them firing off the rifles. Oh, you know, somebody's dying. And so that kind of scared me. I never wanted to go to the military. And then all, you know, the one TV that you had with the 3 channels, throwing the good stuff in, you'd hear the news reports. Vietnam. You'd always hear people that were going to Vietnam. So I really didn't want to go into the military. But it became a necessity because I wanted to continue to make my life a lot better. Because when I was in high school, I intentionally failed the thing. You know, the test ASVAB to give you. So I just checked off and everything on the ASVAB. And so when I finally was faced to go, I had to take it over. And for me, that was really an eye-opener. You know, because when you go in the military, you got to, this thing went, they break you down to build you back up. They break you down, and they make you recognize what your weaknesses are, a few little strengths that you probably have. And so, for me, having to roll your socks, you know, constant training, 8 hours a day, little sleep, having to measure everything like your socks and your underwear in a display. Bed had to be, you know, perfect. And then you had to go out and perform and do, you know, be responsible for stuff, your own individual training. If you got in a leadership position, other people. So it taught you a lot about yourself. That was very important to me because I really you know, didn't really get that. There was no history of military in my family. But that was an eye-opener for me, you know, then because you can always say, well, you know, I would come back home and I would see people that really weren't growing. And, you know, they were on the street, or, you know, they didn't have money, they didn't have jobs, they were stressed about stuff. The things in life for them just really wasn't moving along. And I'd just say, hey, I'm going back. Whatever this little pressure they're putting on me, it doesn't compare, because I want to be successful. I mean, I could stay here and worked in meal, and that's typically what everybody did, and I won't say anything bad about it, because most of my family did that, you know, until the mills closed down in '92. But I wanted something, and I think the biggest influencer on my life is my cousin Charles, who's was like a brother to my mother, and you know, he was a football player, got a scholarship to John C. Smith. But if you talk to him now, it was like an accident. But he, you know, had all his trophies. He went there on a scholarship. I want to go to college. I want to be successful like him. Well, the reason why he's successful because his wife did all this work, did all his papers and everything. You know, he was just a smooth, cool guy. The way he walks, talk, never a stressor, supported his family. That's the kind of role model that it was for me. Yeah. So he ended up, and he'll tell the story, and I'd like to share that story too, because I think it's very, we got to John C. Smith, and he wasn't the best football player anymore. You know how once you get to college, and so it was something, when they got there, the coach told him he needed $1,000. And he just said, sir, I don't have $1,000. And a coach found him the money to go to school. Make a long story short, he ended up having a successful career in the DEA, you know, retired. Back then, it was part of the FBI, Dangerous Drugs and Narcotics Division, wasn't even the DEA. So he did about 35, 40 years and retired from there. And that's just serendipity. Is you got to be prepared for something good to happen in your life. Because there was one time, you know, he met a girl there and got pregnant, had kids or whatever, and that he did not even, they had kicked him out of school because you wasn't supposed to do something, you know, get somebody pregnant that went to school, you know, the morals back then. So they kicked him out. They finally let him back in. He was able to graduate, and both of them graduated. But if you stay, a valuable lesson for people, if you kind of stay there and continue to prepare yourself, things can happen good for you.
Let me stop you right there.
And what, were you going to say something, or no, you just, but.
Mr. Duff, how many years did you serve in the service?
23 years.
Some of the places that you visit?
Oh, well, I can kind of give you how I got there. I think it's more important than the places. I enlisted. I got out of the military. I kind of hated it, and I thought it was horrible. You know, although it was doing some good things, because our military kind of put a lot of pressure on you to perform, to be better. And that's kind of a concept people don't really want to face a lot of times. We don't want to think that we're not as good.
You might want to take a break. This sound out here.
What is it?
Oh, he's drilling.
Yes. Give him a second. I don't know.
So about your being in the military, how did you go about getting involved in the military, deciding that's where you needed to go?
Yeah, I looked at the second time I went in. I got out. I was going to finish my education. That was my objective. So I went to college. I was down in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It was a school there. I had planned on going to North Carolina. And there was a trip that something didn't happen. but I wanted to go there and study law. But I was on this small campus called Methodist College down in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Now it's a university, but it was a real small campus, and the people were real friendly. And I saw some success there on that campus. So I ended up, I wasn't going to go back in the military, and this guy came down to the lunchroom and said, "Oh, we want you to join ROTC." And so my motivation was they were paying $100 a month to be a part of that. And so that was part of my strategy on how I'm going to pay for this education, which is a valuable lesson too. And I know people who are trying to get educated, sometimes they're trying to figure it out, especially these days. I got some stuff on that too. But back then, I used my military experience. I got in ROTC. I worked on campus, and then once I got in ROTC, it was called simultaneous membership. So I took the rank from what I got when I was initially on active duty. I got into the National Guard, and then I was able to be a cadet too. And I got an early commission in 1982. And then I met a girl. I was looking, because at that time it was high unemployment, and I had people PhDs working in service industry because they couldn't find jobs, and so I had a 3-year obligation. Met a woman, we had a baby, and so I went to Germany and became a tank platoon leader in Germany. And what encouraged me is that being military get their officers from a lot of different, they don't have that officer leadership. You get West Point. Obviously, people know about that. But on campus, it's because one time they ran them off campus, post-Vietnam, the Reserve Officer Training Corps, prepare officers. So I went through that process. And, what encouraged me is that you're constantly learning something about who you are and what your strengths are. One of the things I found out, because you're competing with a lot of people from big universities, reading skills. I remember the guy was saying, you got to make your weaknesses your strengths. Your writing and communication skills, you got to work on those. Because she had guys like top of their class in West Pointer. When you go to training, they could read a lot faster than you. But of course, they had a whole different upbringing and benefits I didn't have. Because my family did read. Neither one of them graduated from high school. But they did have newspapers around and books, and they encouraged you to read. But, I just read the Jet magazines and, occasional books that were fun. I also never got encouraged, because I think reading, if you want something to take away from this, that's the most important skill you can have. And I love it now. I constantly read, I probably read 30 books a month sometimes. That is the most valuable skill that you could possibly ever have. That's what I want to take from the military. Encouraged me. When I used to travel my last year, I did a lot of overseas, Kuwait, all the Middle Eastern countries. We did little small-scale exercises there. It was 3rd Army out of Atlanta, which is closed now. And so everywhere I went, the embassies or whatever, they would have a lot of free books. And so on those long flights, I would get a paperback there and just collect the books of different writers, different information. And just developed a love for reading. Because that's power. People can say anything to you, tell you anything, if you can't read and comprehend. That's the valuable thing. How to organize. I did our 40th reunion pretty much by myself. And it was successful. You know, people tell me, oh, we can't do that, you know, and I got, you know, I can plan a strategy how to get this done, step by step by step, finished product. And it came out wonderful. Those are things, those valuable skills. And I feel like really, I put my mind to it, I can do anything I want to do. You know, that's what I got from the military, because it kind of taught me some things about myself that I could do. Because a lot of people, it's kind of bred, oh, well, you know, because people don't want you to be successful anyway. You know, people used to tell me all the time, why are you going to college? Why are you doing it? You know, even people that loved you, they just didn't know any better. Because there was a fear, and I said, get a job. You can get a job, you can work a meal, you know, you're going to do that. But, especially in this today's economy, you got to be prepared. You be able to read. So I was encouraged. That's what I got from the military. And you know, the going to war, killing thing, that was always in the back of my mind, a little concerned about that. But then I could see when there were times that I didn't want to do something that made me do it. You're going to school, you're going to improve yourself. If you want to be competitive, you want to stay in the Army. And so I think Kurt wanted me to get to the point. I did stay 23 years. And I retired as a major. And that's, I did it, but you know, if I really wanted to be a soldier, I did I was a soldier, but I'm a creative person. I like to write. I like to play piano, I write songs. I took up a little bit of art now, I'm doing that. But that's kind of who I really am. You know, the old hardcore macho stuff, yeah, I've done that. I'm pretty good at that. But the creative piece is always something I wanted to do in poetry. When I was a child, I used to write stuff. And I've written 2 books. I have a concept for the third one, hadn't got around to it, because with my creative juices, I go from one thing, kind of, I'm writing songs here, and then now when Daddy passed away, there was a portrait that I had purchased, and it didn't quite come out right, so I thought I maybe could correct it. You know, I just figured out I didn't have. I got another one, but anyway, my skills weren't there, so I kind of went on YouTube and learned how to paint, sketch, paint. So I'm doing watercolors now, and I do some oils and some acrylics. And it's kind of a balance of which one I like the best. Those are the kind of things I took from the military, and I'm very fortunate. You know, I meet people in the YMCA, oh, well, I did 10 years, you know, and 15, 18, 19 years. You did 19 years, but, you know, you're not getting any real benefit from it. So, at 66 years old, I'm not really, you know, stressed financially and stuff like that. Got good insurance. You know, I try not to use it. I try not to ever be sick, but it's there. You know, those things are important. I mean, because probably number one reason people bankruptcy in this country is unpaid medical bills. And black people's health is not that good is because we don't have health insurance. If you don't get anything else out of it, get health insurance. Help pay for the education. Yeah, maybe one day it'll be able. One of my last door, I've got. Let me talk about my kids. Can I brag about them? I got one that's working with a PhD right now. One has 2 master's degrees. She's an assistant principal. You know, one is a nurse practitioner. The other one just graduated. She's figuring it out. She's doing great things. But I found out how to write essays. So she could get some scholarship money. Oh, she graduated. See, that's the thing, you know. She graduated, but she went to SCAD, School of Art and Design down in Savannah. And you have to have a portfolio, you know, you have to be able to accept it in there. Most of the people that go to SCAD are rich Asians. you know. So she got in there, although she graduated from high school with honors, they only gave her so much money. So, and it's like almost $53,000, staying on campus, $53,000 a year. Unbelievable. You know, if she was going to a HBC, she probably would have been able to get all kind of money, you know, just based on her academics. But it's like a long story short, she graduated from honors from that school too. So, my going in the military and encourage them to be in it, the type of person, because here's the thing, throw in the time, she may not be able to, well, my ex-wife said, she may not be able to go back to school next year. You alone. I'm not doing it alone. I'm doing some research. One of the things is called folds. All these things that you know, military discounts, lows, and all these measurable lines, all these things are important stuff that may help you. But that folds thing, I mean, I had to write some essays because she didn't have time. She was trying to go to school and work on campus at the same time. So, wrote the essays, 5,000. There was another military one thing, and then I did one that was called Mesothelioma. It was just an online one. I wrote an essay for that and got $2,000 for her. That one surprised me. Well, I did a whole bunch. I probably wrote about 50 essays, but I had paid her, and there were all these different things out there supporting. You know, because technically I'm a disabled veteran, especially if you're a disabled veteran. And Kurt knows more about that. So all these advantages, you know, once you don't get out, people are out here now. We live in a society where it's all about you, all about me, all about me. The whole frame of the whole capitalist system and all this other stuff is all about. So you have to figure out. And I call it breaking the code. You know, one of the things back, reverting back to the military education that I'd taken from the military and never taken over an answer. Oh, you told me no? Oh, I'll have to figure out some kind of way to get a yes. You know, so not sticking to things. One of the things in my last year, it probably wasn't, $4,000 a year. That was a lot of money back then, and you know, I had made myself poor, so I could be able to get the Pell Grants. I used the old GI Bill for living expenses. I didn't need them. Then one of the things is, she gave me that loan from the financial aid office that year, and I said, ma'am, I don't really want a loan. And about 2 days later, she came back and said, I'll find you some money. You know, the reason why she found me some money is because I was active on campus. I was in theater. We did a lot of one-act plays, directing those. I was in plays. I was in ROTC. I was on campus. I wasn't just sitting somewhere, hiding, complaining about stuff. You got to get yourself out there where people it doesn't matter if you're black or white. They want to know what you bring. Yeah, it does matter, but sometimes it can matter very little. You can make it matter a lot by what you do. Now, I'm trying to make it matter little. I was doing things, and so that woman said, oh, I know you. I saw you in the play. I'm going back there and come up with some free money. And so I graduated debt-free. That is a valuable experience. Y'all done got me going.
Yeah, well, would you recommend, I mean, if like I got a grandson now that, you know, he graduated from school and he just seems like he just can't find a good job here in Mooresville for, you know, how jobs are here in Mooresville for blacks. Mm-hmm. And, I mean.
Back to Edward Duff and Boot. And so that was my vacation in the summer. I'd throw my clothes, a couple little rags in a bag, paper bag, jump in his car, you know, and I'd go down in the country, down Mount Warren, and they used to grow their food and canned their goods and stuff like that. And, you know, they had chickens, they had outhouse, and the pigs. So you get to slop them and all that, and I just loved it. And so I used to go down there. But that little, I discovered that that area, as you come in that hill, going to Mount Morning, you know, a slight little incline that you go up right before you get to the school now, up there. That was my turn off. And you cross the railroad tracks and you go down there. And there was a lady, Miss Dora Houston, was Boo's mama. And she had gave all her children plots of land. It was Ike, Zeb, and then you had the Reeds. And they had plots of land back in there. Couldn't find out. It was a slave owner. One of the biggest plantations in North Carolina was in Mount Moore. So I didn't know all that growing up. And some of the descendants, probably the Reeds, then I started to put things together and I started to think, because I think black people, unlike probably the previous generation where the Africans came and they had oral histories and they kind of, I think about it at some point that black people wanted to forget they were slaves and they didn't really pass down the history as good. They just kind of wanted to say, I want to forget that. And I think that we went through a process, because I wasn't getting a lot of people. You know, people died. You say, oh, let's put sister. I never met her. I met the other sister. You know, so you started to find your family history. And in the old, what do they used to call them, where, you know, the churches used to have the revivals and
Can't beat weeds.
Hey,
well,
can
family.
Can I stop you for a minute? I see a couple of issues and we can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Fun experiences, because we used to go fishing. Me, Boot and Foot, or whatever, with all the grandkids they had. You know, I had my little cane fishing pole. We'd had our little boots, and we'd go pick blackberries. And I remember, you know, seeing snake skins or whatever walking through the woods, and I guess some white guy allowed us to fish on their little pond, and you can always catch the catfish on it as soon as you throw it in. That was my experiences that were great, because I spent time with them. Then we come back and canned the blackberries. One of them funny experiences, and you probably don't want to know. One time I wrung a chicken's neck. You know, that was my rite of passage. You go out there, you wring its neck and pop it. Well, the chicken didn't die. It just laid there on the ground and bounced around and popped up in your ear. And so then you boil it, and then you cook it. So I didn't want to eat the chicken after that. And so they had like to stretch the food source for them, because the low income, they've had gardens adjacent to where they live. So we'd pick the corn, the cucumbers or whatever, and we'd can it, peaches, snap beans, you know, big old bushel of beans, and that was your food source. That's the experience that I got in value. You had to get up and come through. You couldn't sleep late. You had to get up, and the house had to be immaculate. Everything had to be cleaned, and then you had chores.
how did you get to the Pentagon?
How did I get to the Pentagon? That was one of the options. As a military officer, you're managed by your year that you came in, like 82, and you have different steps. You don't stay anywhere but like 3 years. You have steps to command. You have to have these positions to be able to get promoted. So you only spend like X number of years at a job, then you have to move to another job and try to get that another job to prepare you for this next rank. So that's how I got to the Pentagon. That 3 years is kind of like you do something different. You teach ROTC. It gets you out of the command track for 3 years. You know, it's a healthy thing for you. You're not out in the woods or whatever doing a bunch of training. So what was available at the time for me was the Pentagon.
And how did that change your life?
How did that change my life? I don't know if the Pentagon changed my life at all. I mean, I'd learned at the Pentagon, uh, I learned how to operate a computer. I mean, because at the time, computers were fairly new. So when I got there, that was like a skill I was liking. Because you had all the documents. I had a top secret clearance. So you had to lock up everything that you worked on during the day in a safe. And then you had to come in, you had all these stages of security you had to go through every day. So you spend an hour getting prepared for the job as you come in, taking security measures. I mean, I've had other experiences that the Pentagon wasn't really a major experience for me.
What was your first experience with racism in Mooresville?
Some of the, in junior high, I remember some of the teachers. And junior high was fairly new, because when I went to junior high, it was the old junior high. It used to be the old Central High School. And that was the first year that North Carolina, bit the bullet. I mean, the blacks and whites could go to, you had an option. The first year was an option year. The second year was mandatory. And I went to the old junior high. I was out there playing marbles. We're still playing marbles as a part of the recreation during the day, recess or whatever. And a white kid came up and threw dirt in my face. Other things is I felt like you could tell that, and it's the same old story, I think white people were trying to adjust to, when we went to the new junior high, brand new school, like a brand new penny, some of the teachers would just kind of ignore you, wouldn't ask you questions. You just felt like that you were marginalized. And one of the experiences I had, they had the basketball court on the left-hand side facing I think it was a science room. And so we would go out there for recess. And this is kind of funny in a way. So a couple of kids were still out there playing. And as I walked into the classroom, I heard the teacher say, "That nigger is taking his ball." And other than that, I think they thought we were going to be low performers, so they wouldn't ask or challenge, and that's the bad thing. You got to challenge these kids, make them read, and you got to start that at home. Instead of letting them go and just talk on social media and that type of thing.
So you started school during the time of segregation. How did you feel as a kid going through it, and then as a grown man looking back at it, how do you feel?
Okay. I went to Dunbar High School, first through 12, up until 6th grade. And it seemed like it was more corporal type of punishment. You had Norris F. Woods. He was I believe he was a white man. They said he was black, but he looked like a white man. And it seems like my memories of Dunbar is that you're always getting your hand slapped or something like that. Or I don't remember much education going to first through the 6th grade, other than when we played the Christmas thing. They had the little flutes or whatever. We all learned a song that I can still play. I don't remember much on that, and there was a lot of fights. And then the books. And you probably heard this story. You get the books. They were old books that used to belong to white people. We didn't get brand new books. And so they probably were out of date, and you would see other people's name signed in those books. And so all these things probably just kind of put in that you're not good enough. I got a lot of that. But, you can't continue to live. I mean, racism is not going away. So you got to find some way to circumvent it, get around it, not be consumed by it. I mean, it was like soul stuff, and then, you know, I think it was definitely harmful to some people because, you know, at some point when people grew up, they started to internalize it with alcohol and stuff like that and drugs. And so that was an impact. And I mean, that's the same impact that was everywhere in the South.
All right, I got you. I got a new question for you. How do you think the way police have handled situations when you were young, how do you think that set the tone for Mooresville as it grew?
I didn't have that much exposure to the local police. You know, they had a black police officer for a while, and they had the white ones. Actually, they were pretty good. Because one time I was, before my daddy died, I was joking. You know, we didn't get along at times, and I was living down in West End. We kind of got into fighting. And I'll just be honest with you, the white cop came there. I called him everything known to man. You know, I feel in 2021 I'd probably get shot. And I'm just being honest with you, I did not see it. I didn't know, they didn't, like, we stayed up running all over town, walking, so we didn't have cars. You know, you didn't get a car. I didn't get a car until I was 21 years old. I had to buy myself. So you got rides. You going over the height, you going to West End, can I get a ride? And so we walked everywhere. Most of them, my friends, I don't remember a single time a cop like, hey, where you niggas going, and do anything or say anything to. Now, you may have a group of white kids drive by and throw something out and call you a nigger or whatever, occasionally. It wasn't a lot of that. But that's then. Yeah. That's my experience.
Tell me about the West End that you remember.
Easton Heights.
For me,
You grew up in Easton
I grew up
Heights?
in Easton Heights.
Yeah.
We moved to West End. I was about in 11th grade, you know, because Mom, they always tried to improve our condition, because in Eastern Heights, that was just an old mill home that was on its last leg. Moving to West End, it was the first time you kind of felt that you were in like a brick home. All the water, you had running water, number one. You had a bathroom that would flush, and a shower, you could take a shower. You know, it wasn't huge. It was like was it 3-bedroom, I remember right there. But it was small. You felt like you had, you know, I never thought of it as a government subsidized housing at the time, and I thought, oh, this is neat. But the community, as we always do in our own community, we kind of fed on ourselves and did stuff to each other that created an environment. But it was fun. I drive through there sometime, and I said, man, they don't let West End go down the tubes. It was, you know, it was there. After that, I didn't stay in Mooresville. I left Mooresville after I graduated from high school. I had lived here since.
So let me ask you this. Before you left, did anybody talk about or teach about voting?
No. Voting wasn't an issue. You didn't vote because that's something I think you guys in NAACP and all, Kurt and all you folks are doing a lot better. Because I didn't really learn the value of voting and participation and stuff like that until later on in life. Nobody ever talked about it. My parents always voted, you know, but it was a silent thing. It was time to go to vote. And then you realize that, hey, one time they weren't letting us vote, you know, so they can stay in power. But it's a valuable thing. Not just your vote, you know, you got to get out there, participate, show up to meetings. If some issues surface, as collectively as a group, you know, combat it. Because they'll just continue to do it. I mean, if you don't. And what we learned from this Donald Trump experience, it goes a little deeper. I mean, if we hadn't learned anything, I think everybody became a politician or watcher once he got in office, because every day it was something different. but it was a reality. It was what's really out there. You just dug it up.
What's the biggest change in Mooresville that you have seen?
Well, of course, I mean, this area here didn't exist. You know, this whole thing was like the country. You go across 77, you start to see cows and, you know, houses sitting on big lots, you know, that have been around for years. And, you know, out in some of the little areas, it was just trailers and, you know, people living on the land, you know, it's old farmland and old cows and that type of thing. It was just like the lights went out. When you crossed 77, it got dark. There was no street lights. I remember going to some of the people's neighborhood and it was like, oh, it's too dark back in here. So there's been this growth. Yeah, what happened to Mooresville, and you guys know it, you know, when Clinton signed NAFTA in 1992, the mills went away because they could go to Mexico and work cheaper. This whole town was pretty much shut down and it was like scary. It was like ghost town, but everybody's trying to scramble because everybody worked in mills. My mom had been working there forever, Cascade and Burlington and sister, everybody in my family worked in the mills that stayed here. And so they didn't have jobs. Then, you know, they did kind of a program to, you know, to kind of get them trained up and help, you know, get GEDs and stuff like that. And so the town pretty much wasn't for NASCAR coming in by luck. This kind of re-stimulated, you know, white. Although this is Whitehaven, to be honest with you. There's a lot of money here.
Let's take a break.
Okay.
We will.
Okay. You know, one of the things that I learned doing my research was that, I mean, they pretty much gave people the option to move. They were going to purchase the land or turn it to eminent domain or just take the land if you didn't move, because that project was going to go forward. And so what happened with, I think, the Presbyterian Church moved their graves in town and reburied them, but a lot of the slave graves remain. And so I don't know how many, but there are slave graves underneath, among a whole lot of other things. That, you know, a lot of rumors that found a plane and all this other stuff underneath Lake Norman. And a lot of history is probably lost under there. Because the people that couldn't afford to move their stuff, it just got left there. So that was kind of a shocking thing to me, you know, because it's just another one of the things that they kind of separate us from our past and not let us know, and how they did it in the history books, you know, by changing or hiding information that really happened. And I've read some good books about how this whole country developed and the impact, and it just went right back to kind of how those things as a child, in which I was 18 years old living here, just really didn't have a grasp because nobody ever really talked about it. Nobody, and I'm sure somebody had to know that Mount Warren was but nobody talked about it. And then I got to the point where I didn't really want to hear about it, to be honest with you, at that age. And that's the same thing young people are doing now. They don't want to hear the truth. But at that time, I owned a slave. I'm more Cherokee Indian on my side, really I am, than black. But I just didn't really want to do it because I felt like if I did, if I would grasp that, then I might be a failure in life.
Do you know of any plantations in Mooresville?
Yeah, there's actually probably a plantation underneath Lake Norman. Mount Warren is Mooresville. That's the major one that I know. You know, Mount Warren south of here.
Tell us about it. Like,
Yeah, some of the what I know. John, what was his name? I forgot his name.
Rufus
Reed.
Reed.
Yeah, Rufus Reed. And there were several more in like Huntersville, close to Mooresville, Cornelius, and Huntersville and Davidson. There was some there, and I think there was one underneath, of several plantations underneath Lake Norman when it got flooded. okay? And the one here in Iredell County was one of the largest ones at the time, and probably grew cotton. As far as I know, nobody ever talked about it. And you know, when they don't talk about it or don't preserve the history, it never gets known. But that for me, when I started doing research on it, I didn't realize all that was happening.
Like you said, talk about it. So now is the time. This is going to be a legacy that you're going to leave for the others to see.
Mm-hmm.
In closing, what would you like to talk about to tell our young people how to be successful, or how to move forward, or how to pay it back? What is the legacy you want to leave?
What I'd like to leave is pick up some books, read some history about what you read. It's out there now, even if you have to Google it. I don't mind YouTube and Google, and there's some valuable information, things you can learn there. But the big thing is to pick up the book and embrace who you are, and quit following some of these social media sites that are leading you somewhere because they either want you to kill yourself or they want to take your money. And that's essentially all they're doing. And they're robbing you of your youth. But what you have to do is, no matter who you are, she's one of my classmates, that you got to have some kind of plan. We used to say, you know, either have a plan or plan to fail. And quit. That's what I encouraged him to do, like I did my children. You know, when they used to come and visit me when I was separated from my wife or whatever, going through a divorce, they didn't just come around and just running around and just stay on media. Well, the media wasn't that popular back then, but do those things that people were gravitated to at that time. They had to read a book, and when I got home, they go to the library and stack them up with books. When I come home, they need to tell me what they read and discuss that with them. Parents need to be able to share some of the time. You know, I know we're living in a narcissistic time, but cut off some time for your children. See, it's not all their responsibility. It's really, the core is your responsibility, parent. Everybody's not going to do it, but we can't continue to live and complain about what the white man's doing to us when we continue to do stuff to ourselves. We can't. We got to take some responsibility. Just like the black people. If you look back historically in this country and what black people did, the manner we had sense of community, from that one thing, either through the church. Anytime they got out of slavery, they came together and tried to do family.
Where's your family church?
Where's my family
church? Did you have a
church?
family church in Mooresville?
Yeah, it was on West End. Jones Chapel. I remember, I have fond memories of going there and that old preacher just running around. You know, we went, even if I was in Mount Moore, I had one of Uncle Ike lived next door. I would come into church with Aunt Mamie. That's how I got back home on Sunday. And Mom would pick me up from church. Church is fine. Church is a valuable asset, but we can't limit it to just church. You know, when we come together, we good. You know, I don't want to criticize black people, but we come together, we pretty good. We eat and stuff like that. But we really like impart knowledge that's accepted? You know, hey, there was a preacher I read somewhere. We need to be able to take not criticism, but maybe instruction, or listen, this is a better way of you doing this. You know, I'm your family. I'm not going to tell you I'm not trying to take you somewhere to where I can take your money out of your checking account and stuff like that, and that's what's out there, or endanger you in some type of way. So we got to instill that value, to me, into them. Number one, positive. Always speak positive in people's hearts and their mind. Even when people come to me sometimes and, well, come on, there's a better way. You know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. So one of the things is having knowledge. And then over time, you're not going to automatically, as a young person, come out and know everything. Although you kind of believe that you do through social media and taking pictures of yourself and sending it to people and making people like you, like yourself. That's what you have to do. Because that's a wasted, there's only so many hours in the day that you can get something done. If you're spending a 24-hour day, you're spending 16 hours a day trying to see if somebody liked you, or like what trip you went on, or what you did, or your new outfit. That's really giving you no value. You're not taking anything in other than a momentary, oh, I feel good. Have a plan. Have a plan. I told my son, my son is, out of all the girls, he's kind of like, well, he's trying to figure it out. I said, you ain't got to do what everybody else is doing. It's kind of a lot of stress when you got all these women out here outperforming you and stuff. But that's fine. You need to have that stress to do better. Because when I'm gone, who's going to help you? You got to be able to make it on your own. So have a plan. You cut hair, fix. The people that come and fix my air conditioner or whatever, they were there 15 minutes and they got $5.50. I think that's a pretty good job. You ain't got to go to college and, rack up $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 in debt. But do something. All right, y'all got me on.
That's good.
Thank you.
I tell you,